Good evening, everybody. We are getting ready to convene the April meeting of the Portsmouth Police Commission and call the meeting to order. And we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance and ask you, Karen Senegal, if you'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we do that, I want to invite public comments. So let's do public comment before commit. Lieutenant Kinsman, if you don't mind, Lieutenant Kinsman, we're going to, if I can ask for a motion to suspend the agenda to move up public comment and just make sure we don't hold people here longer than needed.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, let's begin with public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to make public comment? Oh.
Hi, good evening. My name is Marta Hergen. Just here to check in, but also wanted to just make a brief comment based on the story I saw on the Seacoast Online this afternoon about the mayor's comments about school resource officers in the elementary school. And I appreciated the chief's sort of thoughtful comments about staffing issues, and it should be an area of discussion. I'm just a little concerned about the mayor's comments that it could be considered in this budget cycle, which I don't think would give us a lot of time to really consider the SRO issue, which I know we had some discussion about in the past few years. And, you know, there's SROs in the middle school and the high school, and I think that the Police Commission will be thoughtful about the issue, and I hope would take time to look into the research. There's a lot out there about the efficacy of SROs and if they actually are deterrents, if they actually do stop school shootings. Obviously, you know, what happened this week with the, or last week with the Portsmouth High School is incredibly concerning and distressful. But I think jumping to the next step of putting SROs in the elementary school is, I think, just a rush to judgment. You know, some of the worst school shootings that we've had in the past few years, including Parkland and Uvalde, both had school resource officers. And Portsmouth High School has a school resource officer, and that was the school that was targeted in our system. So, you know, as far as if there's a deterrent effect or if there's actually an effect to stop school shootings, I just hope the Police Commission gives a lot of thought to that, or reviews a lot of the data and studies that are out there, and whether they actually prevent school shootings or just result in more arrests of children, particularly children of color or children who have disabilities. So anyway, I just wanted to comment based on that story. I know that no one on the commission or the police department made those comments, but since it would kind of be in your purview or the purview of the school board, that hopefully you'll continue to be thoughtful about school resource officers. And thanks. And if it comes up on the agenda, I'm sure we'll be back. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Okay. And now I would like to request a second motion to suspend the agenda so that we can hear from Lieutenant Kinsman.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And as Lieutenant Kinsman is approaching the podium, I would just like to thank him for being here this evening, and for those watching at home. We have the privilege, frankly, of having the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force housed for the entire state of New Hampshire here in Portsmouth, and Lieutenant Kinsman's the commander of that task force, and always think it's a good idea for citizens in this community to hear the benefit of having this task force right here in the city and have a sense of the important work that's being done. So thank you for being here, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And for the record, I appreciate the opportunity to come talk about the task force. Unfortunately, while the subject matter itself isn't always pleasant to hear, I do welcome any opportunity that we have to talk about the good work that the men and women associated with the task force are doing and the impact that we're having. So to that end, I appreciate it. So as requested, I'll give sort of a general overview of the task force, what we do, and also kind of get into the cases that we're seeing here in the state of New Hampshire. So just as a quick overview, the New Hampshire Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force is part of a nationwide task force group, which comprises of 61 total task forces across the nation. Each state has its own ICAC task force. Some states have more than one, and that's purely just based on their geographical size and population. California, for example, has 5. Florida has 3. New Hampshire used to be part of the Northern New England Task Force, and then unfortunately the numbers grew over the years that we had to break off into our own individual task force. But more or less, there's about 5,400 law enforcement officers associated with ICAC task forces across the country. Each ICAC task force is federally funded through the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, which falls under the U.S. Department of Justice umbrella. So basically, each fiscal year, each task force is given a certain amount of federal funds that we're operating with. I'm very happy to report that here in New Hampshire, the New Hampshire ICAC task force receives a tremendous amount of support from the state legislature here in New Hampshire. So we do receive additional state funding, which, quite frankly, if we didn't have, it would be tough to kind of keep things rolling. So what we do here, in specifically here in New Hampshire, is that we sort of have a multi-pronged approach. We do provide training to law enforcement agencies across the state. We are fortunate that we have a very strong affiliate agency participation. There's roughly 100 agencies that have signed an MOU with the ICAC task force here in New Hampshire and are affiliated with the task force. So we do provide training and assistance to those agencies when, in fact, they do catch an ICAC-related investigation. We do conduct proactive investigations. Those most often come in the form of undercover chat operations. So we have the ability of providing trained investigators who are trained in going online into different chat rooms, posing as whether it be a minor, basically, and engaging in these conversations with these suspects with the hopes of getting an arrest before something tragic happens. We'll also do what's called an account takeover. So if we have like a parent and a minor who come into an agency because the minor is being solicited through a specific chat room or a social media page, and the minor makes the correct choice and tells the parent before something bad has happened, we have investigators who will do an account takeover and will do sort of this seamless transition where the investigator will now continue that conversation with that suspect with the hopes of, again, making an arrest. Most often times we are in a position where we're doing reactive investigations. I'll get into the numbers in that in just a little bit. The investigators that we are providing assistance with are trained in digital forensics, interview and interrogation techniques, as well as tactical polygraph examiners as well. And then, quite frankly, we do something like this. I mean, this certainly qualifies as community outreach and education. Quite frankly, if I had the ability to obtain more money or more resources, I would dump a lot of that energy into doing proactive community outreach and education, again, with the hopes of trying to prevent something before it happens. So we have a lot of federal law enforcement partners that we work with on a regular basis. Here in New Hampshire, we have a tremendous amount of support from Homeland Security Investigations. Our main digital lab and our main location is in the federal building in Manchester. We're embedded in the same office space as Homeland Security. We're often piggybacking on each other's cases. Because a lot of these cases, they grow legs pretty quickly and they can quickly jump to a multi-jurisdictional type of investigation. So it's nice to have that positive relationship that we have with our federal law enforcement partners so we can discuss opportunities to charge someone federally as opposed to a stateside warrant. So quite often, most of the cases that we're seeing are possession cases. So these are just like as if you were in possession of drugs or alcohol. So if you're purchasing, if you're in possession of or in control of any type of child sexual abuse material, we see a lot of possession cases. We also see a lot of possession cases that are tied hand in hand with distribution cases, because that's how the cases that are being referred to us are coming in at. Again, I'll get into those numbers in just a second. Also manufacturing and what's called a traveling case. So a traveling case is when we have a situation where the suspect is actually traveling to try to get their hands on a victim. Anytime we have a manufacturing case where, and again, that's a suspect who has access to a child, is manufacturing this type of material, or they're in a situation where they're traveling, those cases jump right to the top of the pile. And not to belittle any type of possession or distribution investigation, but when you have a situation like this and you're making that comparison, these are much more severe. So I talked a little bit before about our reactive investigations. Most of the work that we're getting are through what's called a cyber tip, and cyber tips are assigned to ICAC task forces from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children down in Virginia. They are the clearinghouse. By federal law, electronic service providers such as Verizon and Comcast, and even all the social apps, so Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, all of them. There's literally over 2,400 that are currently registered here within the continental United States. They are all required by federal law to report any type of child sexual abuse material that shows up on their platforms to NCMEC. I won't, in an effort to spare you all the sort of the boring side of the house things. Part of the information that we're getting from in these cyber tips is the geolocation for the IP addresses of where they're being uploaded from and where they're being sent to. So that's why we see a lot of those possession and distribution cases hand in hand, because we may have someone who may be, if we find out that they have received that material, so we have the IP address of where it was received, but we also have the information of where it was sent to, i.e. distributed from. So again, we're working very closely with other ICAC task forces almost on a regular basis. So as recently as 2018 and even 2018 here in New Hampshire, we were catching on average anywhere between 35 to 50 cyber tips a month. That was sort of like our average monthly work. We were also, that was resulting in the execution of about 3 to 4 search warrants a month. And that was sort of our daily, our yearly type of activity. And we're talking anywhere in the vicinity of 500 to 600 cyber tips. So unfortunately, we all suffered in some way, shape, or form from the pandemic, and the ICAC task force program was no different from that. As a result of the pandemic, we saw our numbers spike to about 150 to 200 cyber tips per month. And for the longest time, we thought that, well, we just need to get through the pandemic and we'll go back down to normal. But it never happened, and for a while we were trying to figure out why, and it was determined that basically there are new apps being developed every single day and pushed out. It's a huge marketing scheme. Everyone tries to be better than the previous. And then we are also seeing victims that are younger and younger. We always used to use the bracket of 12 to 17 years of age as that bracket when we were gathering statistics and looking at the victims and the ages of our victims. But now we're seeing victims that are as young as 8 and 9 years old. So when you have younger victims combined with more and more applications, it certainly gives a justification as to why we're seeing that increase in those numbers. And that's still our cruising altitude. That's what we're doing on a monthly basis, anywhere between 150 to 200 per month. So total reports to New Hampshire ICAC in 2022 was 1,823 cyber tips, which represents a 243% increase since 2018. So that slide in and of itself really kind of gives an indication of kind of what the landscape and what we're seeing and what we're up against. So as a result, we're on average executing 2 to 3 search warrants a week somewhere in the state. We have, like I said, and that doesn't happen without the strong support that we have from our affiliate agency participation. And, like I said, I certainly welcome and will take on any opportunity that I have to talk about the task force, but I never do it without recognizing the good work that all those members of the task force are doing from each of those affiliate agencies. Those are the people doing the God's work. Those are the people who are in the trenches doing it every single day. So again, we don't have that success if it's not for the good men and women who are part of the task force getting this done. So currently in our landscape is that we are seeing a huge spike in what's called self-production cases. So these are minors who are literally jumping onto their own accounts on TikTok, Snapchat, Twitch, and Roblox, which are more of the gaming type of applications, and they are literally producing their own material. And when I say material, I'll make no mistake about it, I am talking about child sexual abuse material. So they are literally producing it themselves and uploading it to all these different websites and creating their own content. So as a result of that, what ends up happening is that it can lead to indications or cases such as sextortion types of cases. Again, these are cases that we're seeing a huge spike in. It's not only happening here in New Hampshire, but across the nation as well. And it's really kind of shifted our focus on trying to be more proactive, getting out into the community more and more often. So just as a quick cover, so sextortion is again, that blackmail or threats to expose any type of sexual images to get you to do something that you don't want to do, like send more photos or actually send money. A lot of the sextortion cases that we're investigating, we are seeing that they are financially based. And this is really the latest and greatest in terms of the scams, like the telemarketer scams that we used to have to deal with a lot, that we still do to a certain extent. But a lot of these financially motivated crimes are based out of Nigeria, the Ivory Coast, and Africa. So there used to be a time when we would get to that point, we would find out that those IPs resolved back to those parts of the world, that the case kind of died in the water, that we really didn't have the resources, both in the state side of things and also federal side of things, to take the investigation any further. I'm happy to report that those days are gone because our federal law enforcement partners have decided that that is no longer a valid excuse. So again, working with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the assets that we have in place in the FBI and Homeland Security, we're actually able to go to those countries, provide that training to them, and actually have assets in place to actually kind of complete that investigation. So anytime we see a case that resolves back to Nigeria, Homeland Security will take that. So again, like if it's a case that we're investigating here in New Hampshire ICAC and Homeland Security will work together on that case. Ivory Coast is going to the local FBI office. So it's been, a lot of times we get questions in terms of what exactly are our sextortion numbers, what exactly are we seeing? Unfortunately, the numbers are hard to capture because we know from receiving like cases on the back end of things that the numbers are higher, but we don't have a solid number because the reporting of these crimes aren't consistent across the board. It's been one of those things where we all identify the problem, but no one seems to be able to be in a position to actually solve the problem. I can tell you that here in New Hampshire that we're doing a tighter job of doing that, but these cases came so quickly that it was a matter of let's work on solving them first, and then we'll start capturing numbers in the back end. So again, because of those sextortion cases, we're doing a lot and focusing on the community outreach. We do a lot of parent presentations. We try to do a lot of student presentations. We really ramped up our numbers in our efforts last year. We had 57 total presentations, reaching just under 2,000 total attendees, which is a massive increase from the year before. And then we are also in the midst of completely revamping and overhauling our student-based presentation to talk about these sextortion and self-production cases. And our goal this summer is to provide training to all the SROs across the state. They will leave our Train the Trainer program with a thumb drive, the exact presentation that they've been told how to give. And that way we know our message is consistent across the state. And our goal is to get that out by September. So that's our current goal in terms of the community outreach and education. But again, just students and parents as well. So that's pretty much it. It was really a matter of, I wanted to talk about this in terms of our funding. So fortunately, our COVID funding that we received last year allowed us to really kind of step up our efforts in meeting the increased numbers that we're seeing with cases. So the COVID funding that we received most recently allowed us to purchase additional equipment to help, which is housed in our new digital forensic lab at the federal building. And then we also have the ability to train more personnel across the state. Unfortunately, it's an expensive endeavor, so had it not been for this COVID funding, we would be kind of, in a little bit of a predicament. And we're in the midst right now. I've had a tremendous amount of help from Senator Altshuler here in the Seacoast area. She and I have been working together. We proposed a bill to increase the Forensic Shield funding that we get from the state. So far, it's gained some pretty good traction, a lot of good support. We're not kind of through that process yet. But again, we hope for that will take effect in FY24. So again, that's pretty much what we're looking ahead. So again, I really appreciate the opportunity and certainly, we're glad to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much. A couple of questions specifically about the self-production or production relative to the sextortion, because I've had multiple parents reach out with concerns about scam. Mm-hmm. And when you describe it as self-production, presumably the young person is being manipulated into uploading images of themselves by the perpetrator?
So in some cases, yes. In other cases, unfortunately, we are seeing instances where creating and sharing nude content online is normal behavior. If you're asking the people in that age group, 76% of the individuals who do that know full well that there's a risk that they may be sextorted or have some other type of negative impact. But yet the other piece of that statement is that they do it anyway because it's, again, normal behavior. They take that risk. And I make the comparison a lot of times when I'm doing presentations that I know very full well that I'm safer in my vehicle if I put on my seatbelt. But there are times where I don't put it on. It's a quick jaunt, on the road or whatever it might be. I know, but yet I choose to take that risk. Our youth know full well that if they upload nude content, that it could come back to haunt them. But in their mind, their process is of that. The reward I might get from that is better than if I don't upload it at all, because they're getting likes from their so-called friends. Like if I ask any one of you up on the board to describe characteristics of your best friend, you would give me every indication that you actually know who this person is. You've met them face to face. You went to high school together or worked together or played softball in the summer together, whatever it might be. You know who this person is. Many of our youth have friends based on what the social app tells them. And yet they have no idea who these people are because it's a status symbol. So a lot of the self-production cases that we're seeing is behavior that's associated with that process that they have in their head, if that makes sense. Now, to your point, there are a number of victims who have allowed someone who's grooming them to get so close that they feel like they're trusted to do that because they feel like that's a person that they can trust. Again, like I think everyone in here in the viewing audience will agree that these perpetrators are among the worst of the worst on the planet. There's no question about that. But we would be sadly mistaken if we didn't at least recognize that they have a tremendous skill set and they're very, very good at their trade craft. So they have driven that wedge between that child and any other adult that they may have trusted, including their own parents, and that wedge is so severe that uploading that content is fine because they're still going to be safe in doing so, and they end up becoming taken advantage of.
And thank you, that helps provide further clarification. I've also heard of a scenario where nude image is shared with a young person and the sextortion occurs because the person sending the image says, I'm going to say this is you if you don't give me X, Y, or Z, even though the young person didn't send anything and it isn't them. Right. So, I mean, can you share more about how you handle these kinds of tips where because the community outreach and education, it's one thing if we're trying to educate young people about their risks and how their behavior could help make them susceptible to becoming a target. Right. That feels like a very different message than the enforcement against these perpetrators who are co-opting and manipulating by doing things like sending a nude image and saying, I'm going to tell everybody this is you if you don't send me $300. Right.
And that does happen too, absolutely. And so it's sort of the multi-pronged approach. So if we're talking to the potential victim in that case, i.e. the child, then one of the first important pieces of message that we get out is to stop, don't engage, don't send the money. Talk to, whether it's reporting it to law enforcement or tell a parent, please do so. I don't want to create a false sense of security, but I will say that what's happening more often than not with these sextortion related crimes, because they are financially based crime it's a lucrative business, unfortunately. So if they are not getting the money, they go to the next target because they're wasting time. It's more lucrative for them to switch their focus, go to another target, go to someone who actually will send the money. So we tell kids, don't send the money, tell mom and dad, come to talk to law enforcement, talk to any adult, and let's work on solving that problem. But the other piece of that too is the education to parents. We have been doing a lot of parent and adult-based presentations. And one of the things that we tell our parents all the time is that, first of all, it's okay to be vulnerable. You know, there needs to be recognition given to the fact that the parents of these children today are really kind of in uncharted territory. You know, again, with using the seatbelt analogy, I told my kids to put on their seatbelt when they were getting their driver's license because I went through that. You know, fortunately, I survived car accidents, so I knew that there was a good, even though they didn't want to do it. I had that lesson to pull back on. But even parents of younger children today, like elementary age kids, you know, they may have had a cell phone when they were younger, but I guarantee you they weren't as slick as the ones that are out there now, and they couldn't do what can be done now. So when it comes to parenting and talking about sextortion cases, it's okay to be recognized the fact that parents just now they're trying to parent on an issue that they've never had to deal with before. So while their heart might be in the right place to say, listen, if I ever catch you with Snapchat on your phone, I'm going to take it away and you're not going to go phone back till you're 30. You know, like, I understand your heart's in the right place when you say that because we just want to keep our kids safe. But when you have a child, again, whose process is that this phone is life or death, if the alternative to sending $500 is having my phone be taken away, then I'm going to send the $500 all day long and just pray that the problem goes away because I'm definitely not going to lose my phone. So when we talk to parents, we want to implore our parents to really kind of create an atmosphere where the child does feel safe to come to them in case they get jammed up. Because, again, let's work on solving the problem because, again, we're talking about internet-based crimes. Once that image is out there, you're not going to get it back. You know, and that's the tough thing. So we want to kind of create that education piece on both ends, for sure.
Thank you. Just a couple other follow-ups, and then I'll open it up to others. You talk about serving 2 to 3 search warrants per week. Can you talk about convictions? How many of those actually lead to?
So again, that's a number that is tough to capture because when you're talking about felony-based crimes, sometimes the path to actually being incarcerated it has a it can kind of choose a different path. Sometimes they're going to direct indictment. Sometimes the arrests, they're getting arrested, or in the case decides to be picked up by the U.S. Attorney's Office. We've had problems where getting numbers reported back from county attorneys to agencies. So the numbers are difficult to actually put, the convictions are actually difficult to put a number to. So we had reports of 37 people that we arrested last year, and those were convicted individuals on stateside warrants, and 8 were convicted and arrested on federal warrants. But again, it's a problem that I work almost daily to try to solve. I will be the first to tell you that sometimes that our local agencies who are affiliated with ICAC aren't exactly the best with capturing numbers. Deputy Chief Maloney will be the first to tell you that sometimes when you're looking to try to capture numbers in an effort to put forth solid statistics, the reporting process sometimes is broken. And it's frustrating when you're in the position where you have to report those numbers. And so again, I'm trying to get our affiliates to do better with reporting statistics. But a lot of times there isn't a follow-up from, you might see a case that goes to the county attorney's office, but because of the backups in the court system, that person isn't going to trial for 18 months sometimes. And then when they are getting convicted, the conviction rates, the sentences aren't being reported back to the local agencies where it started to begin with. And then conversely, it's not making it back to me as the task force commander so I can kind of put solid numbers together. So, while I do know that 37 stateside and 8 federal arrests are solid numbers, in my heart of hearts, I do know that they're higher than that.
2 other questions. Can you talk about how you use Nico and if, in fact, I know he's here, but is he part of search and other activity that the task force is doing?
Yeah.
And then describe for people at home who Nico is.
So K9 Nico is an electronic storage detection canine. He was purchased by the task force in 2020. And quite honestly, he has been the biggest game changer that we've had on the task force so far. So the way that Nico works is that he has been trained to identify and locate the odor that is sprayed on any electronic storage device. So a cell phone, a hard drive, even the small little scan disks that are in your cell phones. any type of device that has the ability to store data has a chemical that's sprayed on it during manufacturing to keep it from overheating while it's in the process of storing that data. So that's why Nico would walk right by a remote control, for example, because it can't store data even though it has electronic components in it. So Nico's impact and his ability has been, like I said, it's been incredible. So since 2020, I think he has, tomorrow actually will be his 217th search warrant that he's been a part of. I do know that he has found evidence at every single one of them. So there used to be our process when we were executing warrants, once we were in control of a certain residence or a household or wherever we were, that we would assign 2 individuals per room. They would search the room and then report back and indicate that, yes, this room's clear, and then we would coincide with signatures and all that stuff. But then what would happen is that we would put Nico in the room and that he was finding more stuff. So now Nico gets inserted in the process earlier to save us all a little bit of human embarrassment, because again, no one wants to kind of be showed up by a dog. But Nico's been tremendous because what's an important part of his abilities as well is that he started his career as a puppy actually with a Seeing Eye Dog program. Matt Fleming, who's a deputy with Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, Matt is his full-time handler. So Matt will tell you that he didn't fail out of Seeing Eye Dog. It was simply just a career change because your first job sometimes doesn't work out. So he was bought by a company called Jordan Detection out of Indiana. They tested Nico. He tested through the roof in terms of his drive and motivation for a canine in that capacity. And he actually is most of the top performing dog in the country. So he's been, like I said, he's been involved in over 200 warrants so far. And that's because of Matt's role as an investigator with the task force, is that he's 100% dedicated to the canine program. We structured things differently. So we took away his caseload and farmed out those cases to other agencies. So Matt has the ability to literally call me on a Monday morning and say, where do you need me this week? I'll give his assignments to the week, and then he'll bounce all over the state, and Nico he's involved in almost every single warrant. So he's been tremendous. And he's also, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about his wellness capability. Unfortunately, because of the cases that we're investigating, the material that's involved with, it can kind of have an effect in terms of your mental health and wellness. But what's great about Nico is that he's also a trained therapy dog. So when we're in the office in Manchester, wherever he might be, Nico, and because of his demeanor, he can be off lead, and he's not, he's not like it's not like letting, any other patrol dog off lead. So Nico will literally bounce from all of our different desks. We'll take a break and play fetch for a while, wrestle with him on the ground, or, so we'll all take turns taking him for a walk or whatever it need be. And it definitely has that positive impact on everyone's mental wellness for sure.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Manchester. Could you just tell people at home where you're working from and how you manage time between here and what the facilities are like that you need in terms of space?
Yeah, so personally, although I'm a lieutenant here with the Portsmouth Police Department, I'm 100% working with the task force. And so I have an office in Manchester at the Federal Building, right in downtown Manchester in Chestnut Street. Again, we're housed in the same 2 floors as Homeland Security Investigations. But I also have my time, I do spend time here in Portsmouth as well, so I can bother Karen about my budgetary problems, and thank God she's able to solve that. And again, we have also one of our detectives here in Portsmouth, 80% of his salary is covered under the ICAC Task Force program as well. So he does 4 days a week in Manchester at the digital lab that we have there, and then 1 day a week here in Portsmouth. We were very fortunate to have our lab that was currently in New Hampshire at the Federal Building has been completely deconstructed and reconstructed up again. That was a project that was funded by the federal government and covered under Homeland Security. So it allowed, the space that we have now is much bigger. It's much more user-friendly. We have the ability to really increase our digital forensic side of things. So we have more workstations for our forensic examiners to work at. There's more office space for them to kind of, compile their reports and do all the administrative tasks on the back end of their things. Again, it's just a more user-friendly space, and it really gives us the ability to handle the increased workload that we have in a much better capacity.
That's great. Thank you. Commissioner Scher, other questions?
Just, I think, one question. Do you have any sense of the demographics of the victims that you're dealing with? Obviously, they're children, but their economic status. What kind of are they from? A family, a single parent family? Do you have any feel for that?
I don't have any hard numbers on that, and so to that end, I'm pausing kind of giving you any numbers that might be false. However, based on what I've seen, visually and being out on a lot of these warrants, is that unfortunately they're coming from all different walks of life. Poverty-stricken, well-to-do, different races, creeds. I mean, unfortunately it's a crime that really doesn't discriminate. So we are seeing a wide array of victims as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Commissioner Coyle.
Sure. And do you have a sense of the efficacy of sort of the training and education that you're doing for a deterrent effect? It strikes me that, so much of this is tied into trying to get both parents and kids educated to stop it, at least as it relates to the sextortion cases, which are so voluminous. And I think probably everyone knows someone or that's been, the victim in a sextortion case, but
Right.
how effective it is.
I do know that it has a positive outcome, and I'm basing that on the number of requests that we have received from additional presentations. We overhauled our parent presentation not too long ago. It's actually been almost 12 months ago now, but we revamped that program to address the sextortion issues and also to kind of provide more of an educational standpoint for parents on how to talk to their kids. Ever since we've done that, our requests have gone through the roof. Right now, we're on the pace. We're doing anywhere between 1 to 2 presentations a week, and that never happened before. And we get a lot of positive feedback after doing a presentation, because a parent has taken that advice and they've decided that, I was that parent who said I would snap my kid's phone in half or run it over with a lawnmower if I ever caught them doing something bad with it. But I took your advice. It's worked. We're having a great conversation. It's nice to see that outcome. Again, I don't have a statistical or percentage-based number to report on, but just again, based on how much our requests have gone through the roof, I do know that that outreach is having a positive effect for sure.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Thanks. And then do you know how, do you have any strategies for targeting more marginalized community members or, parents parents that might work long hours, might not be able to access some of the education?
Yeah, we do. Fortunately, a lot of the resources in education is completely free and it's easily accessible. If there's one thing that COVID taught us is the ability to pivot and actually do presentations online. And we haven't necessarily gotten away from that. Although from a timing standpoint, it's best to kind of do a parent presentation, right around this time period. Parents are home from work. But a lot of parents who have kids in that age category are busy with after-school activities. They're getting them to the practice or wherever they might have. And quite honestly, if I've worked a long day, the last thing I want to do is go sit for an hour and a half and look at my ugly mug and have someone talk to me about sextortion cases. It's like I'm good. But we did one recently, and the coordinator of the presentation who had contacted us and requested us, she actually created on her own. She did she put it also on WebEx as well. And so we only had actually 10 people in the audience, but we had close to 45 members who had signed on, and they were able to interact. She acted as the moderator, and so they were able to fire off questions. They were in the comfort of their own home. They could listen to the presentation. And so because of our ability to be able to do that, we're now offering that on a regular basis. So yes, I'm more than happy to go wherever in the state to do a presentation, but I'll also offer it up that if you want to I'll do it on a Zoom if you want me to. I just want to try to get the message out there. So in marginalized communities or wherever it might be, we'll actually do that. We also are asking our school resource officers in this same program that we're creating to be proactive, look out for that, and be able to show that, listen, there are resources out there. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has a tremendous website. It's missingkids.org for those of you at home or wondering. It's a tremendous resource. It has great resources for not only parents and educators, but also for kids as well. And they bracket it down from kindergarten to second grade or third to fifth. So it's pretty unique. They're great presentations, and there you can download those resources. So again, it just gives it the ability to kind of get out to more and more people.
Well, thank you so much for your efforts.
You're welcome.
It makes me wonder if we could get WMUR to do a PSA to drive traffic to the presentation online for people too.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. Sure, I'd definitely like looking into that.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Lieutenant Kinsman. We appreciate your willingness to be here tonight, for all your incredible work, and I hope this gives people at home more information about the work of the task force and about the threats that our young people are facing online, and hopefully keep the good work rolling to address these astonishing numbers, really.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks, Art.
Okay, we'll go back to the agenda, and I'll ask for acceptance of the minutes from the meeting held on March 21st, 2023.
I move to accept the minutes.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now we'll move into the Police Commission portion of the agenda, and before we get into the agenda items, I want to just take a point of privilege and thank the department and the chief and deputy chief and all of the folks who worked over the last week to address the threat to the school system. I know this is a tenuous time in Portsmouth, and people are feeling very unsettled and unnerved by what transpired last Wednesday and the fact that it prompted the schools to be closed on Thursday. I have to just thank you both here as representatives of the entire department for the extraordinary work, the prompt and aggressive response, and the ability to frankly take a threat off the street and out of our community before something really terrible could have happened. So, you know, there's lots to be said about what we need to do to prevent the horrific violence we've seen in communities across this country. And we were fortunate in this community to have avoided that. And it really is a testament to the swift response of the FBI and this department, and then the ability to locate the perpetrator of these crimes. So I say to the community at home watching tonight, and for those who have reached out to me, I know my fellow commissioners, I know there's been inbound calls to the department. We are lucky to be in a place where we have such a tremendous force here, and we will keep working hard to ensure that the community is safe and that the schools are protected. There's more work to do, and we will keep at it. So with that, and I know we may hear more from the chief, but we'll move into the police commission items and ask for a facilities update, starting with the restoration efforts here.
So just continuing on with the facility updates, we've gotten through, as we stated, last meeting, we've gotten through the majority of the restorations. Right now, we're trying to work on some of the projects that were put on the back burner while we're doing the restorations. And we're working with Public Works on putting plans together to address some of those issues, which would be, next would be some of the security steps that we need to take to secure our back parking lot. And again, we're still dealing with dispatch, so that will be addressed when the time comes, when we can get in there to wrap up the work in there.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. So, and is there any effort yet underway to address the backup dispatch location, or is the thought that we're going to hold on that for now?
We're still on hold on that as we transition with the staffing issues.
Any other questions on restoration? Okay. And then an update on the next steps for the public safety facility planning?
So we have met with LaValle Bensinger, and we are working with DPW as well on, there should be a press release coming out soon on launching the new facility project. We're referring to it as a community policing facility, and that should be coming out before the end of the week.
Questions on that? So we will move on to the community priorities agenda items and ask for an update on the CAD RMS software and contract negotiations. Where are we there?
On the CAD RMS contract situation, I think I was speaking with Karen about it today, is Her and Daisy, our IT director, are working with them to finalize the last couple of reviews. Is that right, Karen?
Yep. I was going to say, they always change a lot of language that are in a lot of these contracts, and it has to go back and forth with the vendor, so that we get what we want, and the verbiage is applicable to what the city's willing to pay, do, et cetera. So we're at that point.
So what's your sense of timeline in terms of when that might be executed so the work can continue?
Well, the legal department has been swamped. We have a couple of other contracts up there. So I would say probably, I'm hoping before the end of the summer that we'll have it negotiated, and then we can go forward with a purchase order.
And is there anything we as a commission can do collectively to try to speed up the negotiating timeline?
That's why Daisy and I are going through it.
Okay.
I have found that if we preview the contract, make all of our notes, what we have questions on, what we're looking for, I've been able to, on some of our contracts, look at the language and know that that's something that they always flag. So they found that very useful. So that's kind of what Daisy and I are trying to do now, is get it so that it's much easier for them to review and negotiate only the pieces that we kind of highlight. So it's more work on our part, but it does get through legal faster.
Okay. Questions on that? And I added this next bullet mostly because I was hoping we can find a time in the future to engage, and it may not be Detective Rochelle Jones, it may be someone else on the team, but at one point she provided a data summary of past arrests and for what, across a broad array of everything from a home invasion to a DWI to a theft. And just so people can see the range of arrests for different
types of
types of
arrests.
crimes. I wondered if the data I have from her is now dated. I wonder what it would take to get an update of that.
We could work on that. We actually will have the new crime analyst position filled as soon as we replace our paralegal position, so that should hopefully be within the next month, and that'll be something that we'll be doing regularly, so you won't have to wait,
Great.
I don't know, at least a year or however long it's been since you got it the last time.
Great.
That'll be regularly updated and available on our website once we get the position in place.
Great. I think that would be a benefit to the community for a number of reasons, but I was struck by just the range of crimes and how they fall out relative to the numbers. I think it would be interesting for people to see, be helpful. Any questions on that?
No, thank you for pursuing that.
Do you have any news on timeline for hiring the analysts?
We already have her in-house.
Okay. She's already,
Changing from one position to a new position.
Yeah, I knew that.
We need to fill the back position before.
she can switch.
Right.
But so that was my question. You have a timeline for how long it'll take us to fill the back?
Hopefully in the next month. We've already conducted interviews. There's actually another set of interviews tomorrow, and they're hoping to select a person,
Great.
I think, for next week.
Great. And then the last item for us is the budget timeline and where we are. I know we heard in public comment a question raised about interest or concern relative to funding of SROs. Any updates on where we are with?
So, I mean, I'm going to defer to Karen mostly on the budget, but I know we have a budget review meeting next week, I believe.
At the
Well, the city
actually,
might be-
with the city council is
Yeah,
the
well,
next one. You and I have to work when you get back in reference to that. But yeah, it's our work session with the city council. They're doing a whole day review of everybody's budgets. So we'll
Can you
have our,
confirm the date for people watching?
I don't have it with me,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I think I have it.
We'll find it.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions on budget process and timeline?
Stay tuned.
Nope. Okay. All right, Chief, I'm turning it back over to you. We've already covered the first agenda item, which was to hear from Lieutenant Kinsman on the task force.
You already touched base on the school threat last week, but I just want to reiterate, the work that was done by the members of our police department, I think, was phenomenal, that we were able to address it and have this person in custody as fast as we did. I know even as fast as we worked, the public and even members of city staff just wanted to have information as fast as possible. But during the investigation, it was just things that we had to address and lock down before we could pass on any more information. We knew rather quickly who the person was that was involved in the incident, but we were trying to track him down. And there was also, we didn't want to put out information trying to ease the fear of the community with not knowing exactly where he was at the time. And also, we were looking to see what relative charges we were going to be able to bring forward, and we didn't want to try to calm the nerves of the community by saying you're all safe when we knew that the suspect was still at large until we were able to finally get him in custody and interview him and find out exactly what was going on. And by working with the school department and canceling school, allowed us to take all that attention and focus on the investigation piece without having to worry about protecting everybody at the school. So I know in this day and age, everybody wants information instantaneously, but sometimes these cases take time, and all our available resources we were using when we were at work, but there was just a time frame that we were not able to provide the information because we didn't want it to hinder our investigation.
Well, and I can just say, Chief, if I can build on that, and I won't be able to do justice to the timeline, but when you think about the fact that the FBI found the video through a cyber tip, timely relative to tonight's presentation, and referred it, a decision had to be made late in the day before school was canceled, without more information about the credibility of the threat. It was clearly a credible threat. The person was armed in the video and was making a verbal threat to the school, and then to have had that person apprehended within essentially 12 hours, 18 hours. But I mean, to your point about communicating and what can be communicated when, if initial impressions about the severity of the threat were reported without knowing, for example, that he actually had a vehicle full of guns and ammunition and body armor, again, we could have misled people, to your point about believing that the threat, was not as serious. And so, I mean, again, I commend the department and the superintendent and the school board and the community for responding. Obviously, nobody wanted to have to cancel school, and kids should be in school and parents should be able to go to work. But thankfully, it was within a day we're able to lock down the perpetrator, and now the process will play out.
Right. And we realize it's a tough time for our community. The defendant says it was a joke, but what he doesn't understand is he's victimized our whole community, and this is the second time in
4 months.
And in a short period of time that we've had a threat at one of the schools, and we take it seriously, and we're going to use all of available resources to continue trying to prevent and prosecute people who make a threat towards our school.
Commissioner Squiller, did you want to comment on this?
I'd just like to say thank you again I actually think that everything was handled rather swiftly in light of all the circumstances, which is to ensure that the kids could return to school safely, that any risk of threat, actual threat or risk of threat was subdued, and that was done within a 24-hour period, starting with a cyber tip with knowing nothing. So going from that point to, letting the community know by, the afternoon or the following day, I thought was pretty remarkable in light of all the investigation work that had to take place. So as a community member, commissioner, and parent in the schools, I thank you very much.
Thank you. And, we have officers, Deputy Maloney's one of them, who have kids in school, so our officers take great pride in protecting everybody in our community, including the schools. So it affects us just as much as it affects everybody else in the community.
I think moving forward, the extent to which the school system, maybe in cooperation with the police department, can let students know that even assuming this was a joke, which is an assumption, but even assuming this was a joke, the person's now charged with, in New Hampshire, a Class B felony. So jokes have consequences, and it's not to be taken lightly.
Yeah, and it's hard to see it as a joke when the individual is driving around with an arsenal in their car. So, again, thank you, Chief, and to the entire department for the swift and responsive work. That day could have turned out to be very different. All right, so we move on to donations
So
and grants.
donation and grants, so we have a request, in the interest of wellness for our police department, there's been officers that have put together a program, they're calling it the May Miles Competition, and it's a running program, and they're working in sponsorship with Runners Alley and Ultra Running Footwear, who have agreed to assist them by making donations of training and a pair of shoes and a discount for officers to go in and buy shoes. So I'm requesting acceptance of the donation from Ultra Running Shoes and a gift basket and 20% discount from Runners Alley as prizes for the department's May Miles competition.
I move that we accept the donation of, Ultra Running Shoes and gift baskets and a 20% discount from Runners Alley as prizes for the department's May Miles competition, that we forward this to the City Council for their approval.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
The next is a grant. It's a 2023 Safe and Active Grant Award that we applied for from the Injury Prevention Center at Dartmouth Hitchcock for 50 multi-sport helmets and 50 bike lights and education material to pass out to kids to prevent injuries while they're out riding their bikes, riding skateboards, or any other outdoor activities that would require a helmet.
I move that we accept the grant award of 50 multi-sport helmets, 50 bike lights, and educational materials through the 2023 Safe and Active Grant from the Injury Prevention Center at Dartmouth Hitchcock, and that we forward it to the City Council for their approval.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And Chief, that's a great reminder too for folks at home. Now that the weather's getting warmer, more kids are going to be outside on bikes, on skateboards. Wear your helmets. Stay safe.
Next, I'll pass on to Deputy Maloney to go over the traffic stats.
Thanks, Chief. For the month of March, we had a total of 688 motor vehicle stops. Of those motor vehicle stops, 9 resulted in arrest. There were 50 summonses written for various traffic violations and 604 warnings. We had 45 total reportable crashes. For the month, usually there's about double that for property damage only, but 45 reportable state reportable crashes for the month.
Any questions on traffic stats?
Do we have any data on how that compares to March of 2022?
Yeah, it's right along average. I'm a member of the Parking, Traffic, and Safety Committee, so we go over crash data each month, and we're within, probably within plus or minus 10 on a consistent basis.
Thank you.
Deputy Chief, anything relative to the start of, well, I guess maybe in March, construction season started as the ground started to thaw. Anything you see, I notice a lot of our streets right now are being torn up, or, construction, pavement, anything you're seeing relative to increase in crashes or related vehicle incidents because of construction or during construction season?
No, we do see an uptick in the summer based on the number of vehicle traffic. One thing that we've started to see out that has been something that I've kept my eyes on over the years is just within the last week or so, you see the amount of scooters that are out now. And scooter and moped safety consistently, and since we have this opportunity early on in the nice weather, if we can get the message out to folks that ride scooters and mopeds that they're not bicycles, they're not toys. Wear a helmet, wear eye protection, don't wear flip-flops, because we respond to crashes all the time for a lot of times younger people who are inexperienced on scooters or mopeds who treat it more like a bicycle, and they're dressed to go to the beach with flip-flops and sunglasses and no helmet and a backpack, and the results of a crash on a moped or a scooter are significant. But with respect to crashes around construction sites, we see that consistently the number one contributing factor to our crashes is driver inattention or distraction, which is another way to say most time people are looking at their phone or otherwise distracted. But generally with construction season, we don't see one thing go one way or the other.
Don't text and drive.
Exactly.
I'd just like to mention, since it is construction season, that there will be a lot of construction going on in Portsmouth, specifically around the downtown. They've already started on Market Street, and we'll be working on Islington Street and just about everybody else in the downtown vicinity. So be aware, there's going to be a lot of traffic getting rerouted, and with that, the new weather, there's going to be a lot more vehicle activity, more, as Deputy Maloney said, bicycles, scooters, motorcycles, and we will start to pick up our traffic enforcement as well throughout the city.
To that point, Chief, do you also, can we address, or do we need to do other things relative to traffic flow, given outdoor seating is coming back soon?
That's too, actually, they're supposed to start putting out next week is going to be the first launch of some of the outdoor seating and dining, where streets will be obstructed with barricades. So just to make everybody aware.
Thanks. Any questions on that? All right, we're on to the financial report.
Real quick. We're still tracking 6% below the cap for this period. We're finishing up our quarter-end March grant reports, and once we have that done, then we'll work on the projection for the end of the year. There will be a surplus. As I mentioned last time, the key things are the redundant center, tasers, and things like that we need to address with that surplus. But we'll definitely be returning money to the city. In terms of grants, Lieutenant Kinsman was here. We just got notified by our grant manager that our grant application will be due in the next month or two. We're waiting on that. And then we just got $30,000 for the CERT team. We have to get that grant in as well. We already talked about the CAD RMS, and the strategic plan is still in process. We'll have it done before our work session, which is on May 15th with the City Council.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so budget work session on May 15th.
Yep.
And our next meeting here is, as a commission, on Tuesday, May 16th. And stay tuned for a new date for the June meeting, as there are some scheduling constraints for the original June date. But budget work session for and with the City Council on Monday, May 15th. Our next regular meeting, Tuesday, May 16th. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you, everyone. Good night. Stay safe.